Hello, fellow parents and educators. Thank you for joining me at Education Evolution, where we are disrupting the status quo in today's learning models. We talk about present-day education, what's broken, who's fixing it, and how. I'm Dr. Maureen O'Shaughnessy, your host and founder of Education Evolution and the Microschool Coalition, where we are fiercely committed to changing the narrative, to reimagining the education landscape and creating learning that serves all children and prepares them to thrive. If you are new, welcome to the podcast. Please subscribe on our website to get it delivered to your inbox weekly. If you've been around a while, have you left a review? Welcome, E-chieh and Emily. So good to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. It's lovely to be here.
And listeners, hello. University Prep is a progressive 6th through 12th grade Seattle independent school. UPrep is very intentional about how they reach and engage students and what learning looks like. So it's no surprise that UPrep has a dedicated director of diversity and community, E-chieh Lin, and a director of social emotional learning, Schorr Lesnick. These two talented and dedicated educators have co-created the DEISEL framework and curriculum, which intentionally links diversity, equity, and inclusion with social emotional learning. And we get to learn from their brilliance and hard work today. So you two are like the peanut butter and chocolate coming together to create peanut butter cups. I mean, just this wonderful combination. And it's so needed to help our teachers navigate important concepts that need to be at the foundation of all classroom practices. So would you guys start by just telling us a bit about your roles and then how this creation of your amazing DEISEL program came about?
Okay, I'll go first. Yes. Hi, my name is Emily Schorr Lesnick. I use she, her, and hers pronouns, and I also go by my initials, which are ESL, not to be confused with SEL. And I'm the director of social emotional learning at UPrep, like you said. This is my third year at UPrep. I previously worked at Riverdale Country School, a different independent school in New York, and the work that I do is informed by thinking about what it means to really embody concepts so that our head and our heart and our whole bodies are in connection and alignment instead of just kind of living in like an intellectual vacuum. My background is as a theater educator and facilitator. And, I'm a white educator who's really passionate about awareness and accountability towards anti-racism for white folks as well. So that's just a little bit, I guess, about me. And maybe E-chieh, if you want to introduce yourself, and then I could start to share a bit about how we created DEISEL after that.
That'd be great. Thank you, Emily. Hi, everyone. I'm E-chieh Lin. I use she, her, hers pronouns as well. I'm a Taiwanese Asian immigrant to the U.S. and a naturalized citizen. So I am the director of diversity and community and the director of hiring at University Prep. I got into DEI work and social justice work partially while doing my BFA in ceramics and partially while doing my master's in teaching. Both of those kind of forced me to really think about my identity and how my identity plays in with society. And through that, I started learning about privilege and oppression and how that affects and connects with my identities and others' identities. And then the work that I was doing at Cornell University really kind of solidified that for me. I helped develop a program around dialogue and difference and how does working across difference through dialogue kind of build the social justice world and framework that I very much value. So that's where my interest with DEI comes in. And I also have a fine arts background. So yeah.
You both have great, amazing experiential backgrounds that, like you say, Emily, embody the concepts you're talking about. Tell us about your program.
Yeah. So, hearing E-chieh talk reminds me that at least for me, I'll speak for myself, I'm really striving towards the kind of wholeness and authenticity in my own work that I want us to hold for, everyone in our community, students, faculty, staff, families, alums. And by that, I mean, students can't learn if they can't be their full authentic selves in the classroom, right? And so this partnership came from both a commitment of the school to make sure that our social emotional learning was not kind of in a vacuum that was perpetuating kind of respectability politics or kind of body control or anything like that. But then also from my own desire for wholeness, before working at UPrep, my work was more specifically in what we called at Riverdale, the community engagement office, which really oversaw all of our equity programming and work. And so when I came to UPrep, I was looking for my community. I was looking for the people that I was going to work with and dream with and imagine with. And, I immediately gravitated towards E-chieh and then Jill Leahy, who was the Associate Director of Diversity and Community, both as individuals, but also because of the work that they were doing in their office. And to me, it was a strategy of this is how our work will be most meaningful, it will be most effective, but also that is how I will be able to bring all of myself to this work. So I think that's kind of what fueled it. And then it really came from conversations about how are we teaching these skills? How are we practicing these skills? It doesn't make sense to think about self-awareness, which is one of CASEL's core competencies for social emotional learning, and not think about identity and history and power. It doesn't make sense to think about relationship building, which is another core competency, and not think about what relationships mean in different cultures and communities and history. So for me, it was a no-brainer of this is the way to contextualize these concepts. We're not talking about social awareness. We're practicing it. We're living it. We're messing up. We're reflecting on it. All of that is really important. So yeah, that is the ethos behind our work, is really to make sure that both DEI and SEL are contextualized and again, like not just things we talk about or distance ourselves from, but ones that we locate ourselves in really intentionally.
I love that. And listeners, I want to let you know Emily has a really, really cool list of resources, and that'll be in the show notes so that you'll have access to a lot of these things. And some of these acronyms will be unpacked more if they're unfamiliar to you. You guys, this is so powerful. And I really appreciate that you're talking about embodying concepts and you're talking about practicing and living them and not just having these theoretical or these one-off lessons. I think that's powerful. And I want to shift to becoming anti-racist, implicit bias. I mean, such a big topic. What suggestions do you have to help schools address white anti-racist accountability, implicit bias, some of these huge ideas and realities that are just starting to become a part of mainstream awareness?
Maureen, thank you for that question. For me, and for the work that I do with our students and adults here on campus, it really needs to start with the individual. I think that work really needs to begin with the individual commitment in wanting to be anti-racist and understanding our own implicit biases, which then will filter into how it is done through the way that you teach or through the way that you interact or act with other people. Wanting to become anti-racist or understanding your implicit biases, you have to be humble enough to recognize that some of the things that we have learned through society socialize us to be racist and socialize us to have biases. And recognizing that, I think, is one of the biggest points in being able to start to do this work. And then after that, it's around making sure that what you do, you're also willing to learn from others. Doing the work yourself has a lot to do with finding the education that you need to be able to unpack some of those racist ideologies, as well as the biases. And then from there, who are you going to engage with? Who are you going to interact with? If we're solely going to stay within just the books and learning from books and not actually engaging with people, I think that there's a limit to how much that we can do on our own. From there, then who you choose to engage with, who you choose to work with, who you decide to talk to and understand what it is that you need to learn through experiences is kind of that next step. I think that that's kind of where I would ask people to really consider that starting point. And then humility, being willing to listen to others, being willing to question yourself and understand that, we make mistakes. The way that we're socialized into our beings in society has a lot of parts that we need to unpack and that we need to learn to be okay with saying, I am racist and I can and will and want to do the work to be anti-racist.
I love that. And I love, again, you guys are so united on this theme of embodiment. It's not just read a book or two, but then what are you going to do with it? How are you going to engage? And who are you going to engage with? Emily, what would you add?
Yeah, I'm so grateful, E-chieh, for the way you framed that. Because I think when we talk about institutions and changing the institutions, we forget that institutions are made up of people, right? And that individual work is necessary because we are working within these systems. It's amazing to hear more fluency around the language of systemic racism, but these systems are not outside of us. They are us. And so being able to do that individual work is essential. And I think just hearing the exhale that you let out, Maureen, around the humility and the gentleness of this is really important work and it's hard work and we have to be gentle with ourselves and reflective and honest, all of those components as we kind of work to unlearn so much of the racism within us and then think about how we show up in community, in institutions, and then work to make our institutions more just. And I want to acknowledge that for teachers, it can be really scary if that's not something that we feel we have expertise or experience in. As teachers, we're so being the expert in our content and knowing everything and having the answers. It can be, like E-chieh said, humbling and scary to think, oh my goodness, I don't know this all. And first of all, that gentleness of the system was designed for you not to know it all, particularly if you're white. The system was designed to be confusing and invisible. And then saying, and I'm going to model, just like I would for my students, that lifelong growth, accountability, and learning. I'm going to model that and do that as well because they deserve it and because I deserve it, right? I deserve that wholeness as a teacher. So, and I can share some more resources around that framing, but Dr. Howard Stevenson's Promoting Racial Literacy in Schools is a great book and resource to kind of look at where DEI and SEL intersect.
Love it. Thank you. Yeah. And remembering to be gentle with ourselves, I think that's always huge.
Yeah. Can I add one more thing, actually?
Of course.
Yeah. So I think it's, as someone who has been thinking about my own whiteness and kind of working to unlearn racism with myself for almost 15 years, it's been heartening and confusing to see the uptick in the term anti-racism being used so much, particularly since the murder of George Floyd. And I guess what I say to that is, when an institution or a statement, comes out that says we are anti-racist, or an individual says I am anti-racist, or I'm working to be anti-racist, that feels good to have that language and to hear it. And we have to do the really hard reflection of, so what's changed? So what has changed in our work to make us anti-racist? Did we hold space for listening and reflecting in the spring that maybe we haven't been doing as much, right? Are we I think the accountability piece in me is okay, that's great. And now what? Where does that reflected in our individual and institutional practices?
Absolutely. You're saying this, so you're walking your talk. How? I think that's really important to be questioning ourselves on.
Maureen, can I add something as well?
Of course.
I think I want to echo what Emily said, is in that I think that one spring is not going to, we aren't able to make those changes as quickly as people may necessarily think, right? A part of this work takes time, and a part of this work takes time to want to change. Wanting to change and taking those first steps, right? Listening is one of those first steps in thinking about how to start to really build what that anti-racist institution looks like. But that needs to continue. It can't just be a one-time thing. It can't be just okay, we've done this, check, we're anti-racist.
Yes.
I think that that's where I want our listeners to really understand is that it's continual work. As Emily said, it's modeling work. We are all within our society built to think in a particular and socialized into thinking a particular way. And that work needs to continually be pushed against to make sure that what we're doing is equitable, is making sure that this system changes, because it's really, 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 really easy to just fall back to the status quo. It's so easy to just want to be back to what we normally do. Yeah. And I was at a conference last week where one of the speakers said, there's something about this time that we're in right now with COVID that can really bring us to a part of change that we have not done institutionally. And if we are constantly thinking about wanting to go back to normal, understand that normal is oppressive to a large number of people in this country, to people of color, to the queer community, to people in the lower socioeconomic community. We need to really take this opportunity to think about how we can truly be anti-racist institutions, how we can be institutions that create equality and not just fight for equity.
I completely agree. And you're right. So many people want to get out of the pandemic that they are saying, let's get back to normal. And why would we want to go back to horse and buggies or back to, carving letters on stones? So no, we don't want to go back. We just want the pandemic to end and to move forward. And E-chieh, I have a follow-up question for you. If schools could have like one social justice or diversity priority, do you have a sense of where you would want them to start or what you would want that to be?
I think a self-assessment. Individual self-assessments and institutional self-assessments of policies. What is it that you as individuals believe? What is it that you as an institution believe? And how are you actually truly practicing those beliefs? It's something that for our institution, I've been wanting to do. And I think it's something that we are going to start to do. When schools look at what they're doing, I don't know how much do they truly think about the individuals within it as well as the institution. We look at things as groups, right? That's kind of how racism has happened, is because we lump people and group people into different categories. And when a school looks at itself, you're looking at groups within the school, not necessarily the individuals as well. And I think there's a tie between looking at individuals as well as looking at the groups, and thinking about kind of the equity assessment of a school from different identity lenses, I think would be really important. Yeah. Emily, do you have anything you want to add?
Well, first, something that you said, E-chieh, really made me think about the Jay Smooth video that's many years old at this point, but he talks about how we often think of racism as something like a cavity, like you have it and then you can get it removed, but we need to think about it more like plaque, and that you're constantly flossing and brushing your teeth, and that it's ongoing. So just that imagery, I think, can be really helpful. I think that, and also reminders of but I think that in terms of what schools can do, I think another piece to remember is like the data is often already there. So I think sometimes we say like, oh, well, we need to wait until we collect data, or we need to see X, Y, Z. And I think we need to really be more expansive in our understanding of data. Numbers of retention of, different student demographics or faculty staff demographics is data. If your school had one of those Black at Instagram pages, like, that is data. And folks have already shared some pretty courageous and challenging things on those kinds of platforms. So, like, look to those instead of asking again, right? And the possibility of re-traumatizing. So I think use the resources you have as data in the reflection process. And I think goal set, like, what is it that the school really wants? And the individuals in it? Do we just want the issue to go away? Do we just want to, like E-chieh said, say we've checked it off? What do we imagine for the school? How can we use some radical imagination to dream really big? What would it look like if everything could change? And maybe you won't change everything, but I think that exercise can be really, really liberating. And I want to thank thinkers like, Dr. Bettina Love and other abolitionists for really bringing up that kind of imagination and opportunity to think and build something completely new that would serve everyone and would serve justice.
Yes.
I think the one thing too I wanted to add is that oftentimes when we look at data, people will think, oh, that's just a small subset group of people.
Mm-hmm.
That mindset needs to change, because that group of people are also a part of your community. And if they are feeling unheard, unseen, that needs to be heard. And that needs to be really important, because that small, whatever you consider, those few people, there are more if there's one or two feeling that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's a very white supremacist notion to say, that's just the few. So it's not the general normal group of people that would feel that way. Right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So we as administrators of school, we as people who look at data, need to understand that data could actually be more important than what the majority is feeling.
Yes. Very good point. Emily, I want to divert just a little bit. Our micro school students have used improv to touch on SEL issues, and it's been powerful. So when I saw that you had a background in applied theater, I'm just curious of the applications, and maybe you've even used it in your DEISEL program. But to me, embodiment, that whole
Mm-hmm.
theme,
Mm-hmm.
that's so rich. Would you mind just sharing a little bit?
Yeah, I'd be happy to share. I think that I bring a lot of applied theater and improv to my facilitation, in person and on Zoom. You can do improv on Zoom. It's different, but it's kind of charming. And for me, it's about, if I'm going to borrow from Augusto Boal, who created Theater of the Oppressed, it's about rehearsing for the world we want to be in. It's about rehearsing for the revolution. It's about building muscle memory so that we can activate that within ourselves. And it's about demechanizing other, oppressive systems within us. And so what that looks like, and I'm happy I can share, I think it's in the resources link, but I'll put it in if it's not, which is an activity like writing from the perspective of a character in a book that you're reading, or a play or a movie. That is applied theater, and that is DEI, and that is SEL, right? The opportunity to, if you're familiar with Invasion of the Brain, that is a Theater of the Oppressed activity. Sometimes it's called Stop Go, but it's an opportunity to really train and retrain ourselves in the ways that we respond to directions and to ask questions. So actually, can I facilitate it right now?
Oh yeah, please.
Okay. So I can't see you, so it's just going to be verbal, but this could be done physically as well. So when I say go, please say go. Go.
Go.
Go.
When I say stop, please say stop. Stop.
Stop.
Go.
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 You're correct. Yeah, just repeat it. So yeah, repeating that. When I say clap, I want you to clap your hands. And when I say name, I want you to say your name. And I know that you two have different names, so you'll say them at the same time. That's okay. Clap. Name.
E-chieh.
Maureen.
Go.
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 Stop.
Stop.
Clap. Great. Wow. Okay. You are so great at this. Wow, wow, wow. I think we can take it to the next level, which is I'm gonna reverse the instructions. So when I say go, please say stop. And when I say stop, please say go. When I say clap, please say your name. And when I say name, please clap. What do we think? Do we think we can do it?
Sure.
Go.
Stop.
Stop.
Clap.
E-chieh.
Maureen.
Stop.
Go.
Go.
Stop, stop, go.
Go.
Go. Go. Stop.
Name, go, clap.
Stop.
Stop.
E-chieh.
Maureen.
Okay, I'll pause it there. Well, what was that like for you?
A little stressful.
Yeah. What was stressful?
Just wanting to get it right and my brain scrambling to keep up with your commands.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the aspect of like making sure you keep everything in line and in the actual patterns that they need to fall into takes a lot more cognitive strength.
Yeah. Cognitive strength is a great way to put it, E-chieh. It is work to pause and rethink. It makes sense. You're like, all right, I'll just flip it in my mind. But it is actually that work. And honestly, when we think about systems change, it is that pause that we have to hold on to. We cannot, it is really important that we remember that we are changing things that we have been told should be one way forever. Right. And we are, and not to say that there haven't been folks, particularly, Black and Indigenous folks who have been fighting and offering alternatives for generations and centuries. But really that this work of systems change is grinding against the status quo. And it feels clunky and it's harder and it's slower than if we just went with the status quo. And there will be messy mistakes. And that's okay. So
yes.
Thank you for just participating in that as an example, because I don't want to just talk about it and say, we don't want to just talk about it. I want to give you an opportunity to do it. And it's activities like that give us an opportunity to really check in with how did that feel? Like, I know that I felt a little bit of anxiety and tension in my chest hearing you all do it. I wanted you to get it right. I wanted the example to go right. And that in and of itself is an opportunity for me to check in as an educator, with my own emotional reactions and how I'm kind of processing this work.
There you go to that embodiment again. You're really unpacking it with so many awesome examples that take this out of a head activity and into our whole body. Thank you. This is so cool.
Thanks for participating.
I have kind of a big picture question. So if you look ahead and every UPrep student, every student period graduated with healthy diversity, equity, inclusion, and social emotional tools, I'm wondering what would the graduate profile of these young adults look like and how might this impact society? How's that for a little question?
I can start, I think. I think if every graduate left our school successfully understanding the DEI and SEL skills that we would like them to have when they leave UPrep, I think that would be a massive contribution to society because every person touches a number of people outside of the community that they're in. And when our students leave UPrep and the ones who have developed these skills, when they do come back, what they say often is something around, I go to college, I'm in these spaces where students have not had the opportunity to have the conversations that we have not had the opportunity to practice being in conflict and being respectful, that it's an eye-opening experience for them to be in the space as the person who does have these skills and experiences. And I think that when one individual has and is able to then continually pass that along on to other individuals, it's a ripple effect that creates a society that is more willing to value difference, more willing to understand difference, more willing to be curious about differences and want to engage with it instead of saying, oh, that's not me, so I'm not going to engage in that.
Yes.
I just first want to thank you for saying all students. I think that if we are schools that are working towards equity, we need to care about all students, not just the ones that come to our school. So I think that students who are able to, or graduates who are able to really be their whole selves and embrace all of the complexity of themselves and others with care, with curiosity, with gentleness, and with a spirit of justice, that would be my dream. And by that, I mean, asking questions. Whose stories am I hearing? Whose stories am I not hearing? What perspective is this coming from? What can I do to make sure that more voices are being heard? What can I do to make sure that I'm being the most welcoming person that I can be? What can I do to make sure that people feel like they belong? I think those are the kinds of questions that if our students are asking as a practice, as an ongoing practice, then we will have done our job.
Love those answers. Yay. My final question is always my magic wand time. So I would love to hear from each of you what you would wish for our schools in terms of creating these graduates, these students who are DEI and SEL proficient. So magic wand, take it away.
My question is what's at the root of all that, right? And so if every student could know that they were magic and that they were surrounded by people who were magic, then I think we'd be able to do our work. Yes, there would be other resources, and yes, but I think that's where I'm going to start. The magic wand is the ability to see magic in yourself and others.
Wow.
I think for me, it starts with the adults on these campuses. And my magic wand would be that every adult understands and is fighting for justice, understands diversity, equity, inclusion, as well as social emotional learning and how those two tie together. And in everything that they do, in the education they provide the students, in the interactions that they have with the students, that those are conscious thoughts in their minds and in their actions, that they can really model that behavior for students to understand why it's important to be that way. That would be my magic wand use.
And I think to that point, E-chieh, I'm so glad you said that, supporting teachers to build those skills. I firmly believe that no one is disposable or cancelable. And so it's if you're not there, okay, but what are we going to do to get you there is the question.
Right.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, you too. UPrep is so blessed to have your dedication, your deep thinking, and it's obvious just from this conversation that you are modeling this, you're grappling with this, and that you're embodying all of these pieces and really trying to feel your way through this. Thank you so much for sharing with us today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Yay! I need to take a step back and process. E-chieh and Emily are extremely knowledgeable about diversity, equity, inclusion, and social emotional learning. DEISEL. Lots to process from their powerful insights. I'm also blown away because they are the best kind of teachers. To me, great teachers have 3 qualities. These 2 dedicated folks definitely do. Great teachers know their stuff, are lifelong learners who keep growing, and walk their talk. Both Emily and E-chieh are humbly, with curious growth mindsets, working to embody their learning and model it for others. I'm inspired. Speaking of humble, there is nothing I can imagine adding to their interview, except that imitation is the highest form of compliment. Wouldn't it be great if each of us would follow Emily and E-chieh's example to strive to learn and grow in DEI and SEL? Just in the interview, I got to learn and stretch. It was a bit scary playing Invasion of the Brain. The game had new rules for me, and I felt an urgency and tension in my body. That physical representation of how the world is changing the rules and understandings and status quo right now was powerful. System change. It's one person and one moment at a time. I've placed more theater to kindness and awareness activities in the show notes. I've also put Emily's extensive list of SEL activities for families and educators during the pandemic. Getting to unpack the change our world is in and being gentle with ourselves and each other as we grow is so important. We can be the change our world needs. As E-chieh says, our ripple effect could create a society more willing to be curious and open and to seek to understand and then fight for justice. Combine that with Emily's magic wand wish that each student sees and knows they are magic and sees the magic in others. I challenge each of us to this aspirational and unifying vision our world so desperately needs. If you're finding yourself thinking, I need to do this in my school, let's talk about it. I consult with schools to help them find new, innovative solutions to reaching every student. Let's put together an action plan. Visit educationevolution.org/consult to book a call and let's get started. Education Evolution listeners, you are the ones to ensure we create classrooms where each student is seen, heard, valued, and thriving. We need you. Let's go out and reach every student today. I'd be so grateful if you'd head over to your podcast app to give a great rating and review if you found this episode valuable. Don't wait. Please do it right now before you forget. I really appreciate it. Thank you for listening. Signing off, I am Maureen O'Shaughnessy, your partner in boldly reimagining education.